For decades, Canada has been a pillar of the Western order, G7, NATO, and a close US ally. But what if Canada joined BRICS, the bloc of emerging economies challenging Western dominance? BRICS, now expanded to include Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE, is reshaping the global balance. For Canada, joining would mean rethinking its identity and alliances, pivoting from the West to the global South. Why consider this? The world's economic center is shifting, and BRICS nations represent massive markets and future growth. For a trade-dependent Canada, diversifying beyond the US is a strategic hedge. Such a move would test the strength of old alliances and redefine what it means to be Western. Canada's entry into BRICS would force a global reckoning, challenging the old East-West divide. The story of Canada joining BRICS is a lens on a world in transition. Canada joining BRICS would instantly diversify its economic ties. Reducing reliance on the US new trade deals could open vast markets for Canadian goods. From lumber in India to agri-tech in Brazil, investment would flow both ways, Chinese and UAE capital into Canada, Canadian pension funds into emerging markets. But this pivot risks backlash. The US could retaliate and Europe might cool relations. Canadian industries would face new regulations and fierce competition, testing their adaptability. The rewards are huge, but so are the risks. Canada would be gambling stability for growth. Success would depend on managing this complex transition without burning old bridges. Joining BRICS would put Canada on a diplomatic tightrope between old allies and new partners. The US would see this as a strategic defection, straining security and intelligence ties. NATO and G7 partners might question Canada's commitment, while BRICS itself is a mix of democracies and authoritarian states. Canada would trade like-minded allies for a pragmatic, sometimes fractious coalition. The upside, Canada could gain new independence, acting as a bridge between rival blocs. But the risk, alienating everyone if the balancing act fails. Canada's BRICS membership would upend its role in global institutions like the UN, IMF, and World Bank. Instead of defending the status quo, Canada would push for reforms favoring emerging economies. At the IMF and World Bank, it would advocate for more balanced power, challenging US and European dominance. Canada's presence would boost the credibility of BRICS' new development bank, making it a mainstream player. But lending its reputation to a bloc with mixed records on transparency and rights would be tricky. Canada would have to champion its values from within, or risk being used to legitimize a new, not necessarily better order. The outcome, Canada could drive real change, or lose its influence entirely. BRICS membership would disrupt every sector of Canada's economy. Energy exports could shift from the US to Asia, requiring new infrastructure and raising climate concerns. Financial services would gain access to fast-growing markets, but face tough competition from BRICS giants. Tech collaboration could accelerate innovation, but also risk intellectual property and security ties with the West. Agriculture would boom with Canadian products feeding billions, but market access would be hard-won. Every sector would need to adapt, balancing opportunity with new risks and regulatory hurdles. The challenge: scale up sustainably and ensure new markets translate into real gains. Canada's economic future would be radically reimagined. If Canada ever considered joining BRICS, it would need a clear public strategy and national debate. The government must outline benefits and risks and manage fallout with Western allies. BRICS in turn would need to evolve, embracing transparency and inclusivity to welcome a G7 member. Canada would have to reassure old partners while building deep ties with new ones, investing in diplomacy, culture, and business links. This move would be the boldest pivot in Canadian history, for some full of opportunity and peril. It would force Canada to redefine its global role, navigating between established alliances and new frontiers. For the world, it would signal the end of the post-war era and the rise of a truly multipolar age. The future will belong to nations bold enough to chart their own course.